Hacks likes this very much.
Welcome to
Coffee with Toffees.
Five, four, three, two, one.
Let's do this.
All right, folks, welcome back to Coffee with Toffees. My name is Toffees, bringing you all the best in esports Dota 2 coverage as usual, and I'm joined here by my special guest, Zyori. I've made some mic adjustments to turn myself down, so if it's a bit too quiet, make sure you crank up that volume so you can hear Zyori nice and clear.
I turned myself up a little bit also. Hopefully that didn't just break everything.
Nah, man, that should.
I'm trying to help Toffees, but I seem to be doing the opposite with all of my fails so
No,
far.
your help
Adding,
is
like,
your
2
help
out of
is
5.
beautiful, and it warms my heart. So we're all good, guys. Let us know if that sounds great. For those of you tuning in on the podcast and the YouTube channels tomorrow, this is being taped live in the evening before Coffee with Toffees release. So if you hear us talking to the fans, you can always join us over on twitch.tv/Toffees_Dota2 and see the live recordings. That said, I've got to go with the plugs. That's how we pay the bills. My name's Toffees. You can follow me at Toffees_Dota2 for upcoming matches, tournaments, all the fun information you need. On top of that, I got to plug the brand new Dota FM. We are getting more and more casters in and more broadcast times, so you can follow it at the Dota FM on Twitter, and we will announce whenever games are up. So our goal is that whenever you're at work, you can listen to Dota while you're doing it. So less bandwidth than Pandora, and a great way to listen. Also, if you want to support the show, patreon.com/Toffees is the best place to go, and also the only place besides this stream to get the sick new Coffee with Toffees coffee cups, because there's nothing like telling everyone else in the cubicles that you're the man. That said, that's enough for the plugs. Let me introduce you to our guest today, Zyori of Beyond the Summit. How are you doing this evening, sir?
I am fabulous, Toffees. I am recovered from the jet lag of my trip back from StarLadder. Back in the swing of casting. We're doing Esportal the past 2 days with Parker. So I'm feeling pretty good. Looking forward to DAC and all the other fun projects we have around the corner for BTS.
Awesome. BTS has been very, very busy lately, and we'll probably talk a little bit about that. But before we do, it's a news show, so we're going to do some news. We're going to talk about the pro news, the tournament news, and then we're going to get into a lot of talk about StarLadder, how it went down, and some great stuff. Zyori has been the darling of Reddit for the last week or so, which is fun because it just ebbs and flows, man, ebbs and flows. And we want to talk a little bit about the improvement and sort of the change in perception that I think really came from how great that tournament was, but we'll get into that. So first thing I want to talk about is this is sort of pro news. It has to do with a company that covers a lot of pro news, and that is the, I don't want to say rival, but the counterpoint to BTS. Join Dota has hired another new person. You guys may remember they built a studio for themselves, I don't know, what was that, like 6 months ago, and hadn't filled it with anybody.
Did they finish it?
They did finish it. And since then, from what I understand, they've hired 2 new folks on. Durka's actually going to be on the show Monday to tell us a little bit about himself, since most of our North American audience doesn't know who he is. So that'll be exciting. And Pingy has just signed. So Join Dota actually expanding into Russian casting for the first time. So this should be pretty interesting. I won't be doing an interview with him, as I don't really know him or how good his English is. But I take that back. Pingy, if your English is good and you want to come on the show, please do so.
I know his written English is pretty good. I've chatted with him on Skype a little bit. I've never heard him speak English though, so I can't say.
So
he's a cool guy though. He sponsored that ESP Shock Therapy Cup, the first tournament
really?
I casted since I came out with LD. I think so, unless I'm confusing it with something else. But I distinctly remember in the first tournament casting being like, "Shout out to Pingy, that guy's a badass,"
Nice.
and not really knowing that well what he was doing or why he was badass, but it seemed to be the right thing to do. So, Pingy, you're awesome.
Everything I've heard about him is he's great, and I'm excited to have him on there. And I think it's kind of fun to have another big studio step into the Russian game. So we'll leave it at that, but it definitely leaves some opportunity for expansion in other regions. The second piece of news that I thought was interesting, and it's under the pro news section because I don't know where else to put it, is that the Malaysian national government has officially recognized esports. So this is a big step.
What does that mean?
So it means,
like, does that mean for visa stuff mostly, or what's the?
So
what's
sort
the
of for
catch?
visa stuff. It's sort of like in China. The sports commission, who's in charge of kind of deciding where visas go, calling it professional. They decide who comes and goes and whether or not it gets state support, from what I understand. And Malaysia is now saying the same thing. So there's a state support. The actual statement that was released by the government, from what I understand. So Esports Malaysia is the company that's running it, governmentally recognized. They introduced themselves as the governing body, and then they also followed with, this will signal the start of esports in Malaysia to truly become a national sport. Please invite as many gamers as you can to witness the historical event, as it is free. Due to limited seating, please RSVP through this link. So they're actually doing an official ceremony to sort of kick this off. And the reason this is important is Corey was on the show last week and talking about his time in Southeast Asia and the scene over there. And he said players, especially in sort of the Malaysian area and some of those struggling countries, I guess is the best way to say it, is where we start to see those 322 issues come out, because of the fact that there's no way for them to pay their bills, to survive, and compete at the level that is required to be a competitive team. It almost forces them to want to do these things to try and make the cash they need to survive. So with governmental representation, we hope that helps fix the problem a little bit and gives it a little bit more focus. I mean, I guess it's a better solution than just banning Dota like they did in the Philippines.
I was just going to say, this is much better news than what we've heard in other areas in that region of the world where, I don't know, I've read about that Philippine stuff. I kind of knew that was coming before it was official. There had been multiple news posts about the issues they've had, mostly with violence in LAN cafes. I think that's where a lot of it came from. There's a lot of footage on YouTube. If you just Google, like, Pinoy LAN fight, people just coming in with knives and weapons and just trashing a LAN center to beat each other up because they were talking shit about some Dota. It's pretty hardcore. I don't know what the remedy is to that. I don't think banning video games is the remedy. Right. I don't think the video games are what's really making people angry, but that shit's fucking scary. Yeah. Dude. Jesus.
So, guys, take your Dota seriously, but not that seriously. It sounds like a bunch of Raider fans down there.
I love it.
So next piece up, and this is an interesting one. This is one that's being talked about. Interestingly enough, it was published on Gozu, and it was written by Skim, who writes a lot of really great articles. And he published this article, which is a totally different thing for another day. Is it okay to publish so much opinion piece in esports? Because I've seen a lot of these come out. But according to Skim, Merlini is considering a return to the competitive scene. He cites multiple sources and even implies that Demon may be joining him. Now, it seems to me that I've seen a lot more Merlini playing in some competitive venues. We know that he went to Zephyr and worked down there with them for a little while. I don't do gossip, so I'm not going to make a call on it. Zyori, do you know anything or want to comment on the Merlini returning to competitive play?
So I'll say a few things. Let's just look at this from the perspective of someone who doesn't know anything, right? We know Merlini likes playing Dota because if you watch his stream, he plays a fuckload of it, right? We know that he has a history of playing competitive, We know that he has at least a mild interest, as he did have that stint with Zephyr. You would imagine that if you didn't have an interest in playing somewhat competitively, you would never have moved to Korea, uprooted your life to do that. I think if you connect the dots a little bit, some of what he's saying here could be true. He's certainly been streaming what seem to be serious scrims as of late. I don't know. I have mixed feelings about this kind of article. I think it's like it mimics real life journalism a little bit because it's like, all right, we got some sources. This is cool. This is fun news. It's kind of not really link bait, but like the kind of shit that people want to read about. What I don't like is that there's just no substance here. It's just like, here's a paragraph about Ben's fuck buddies. Okay, that sounds like a great team. And according to multiple sources, I know you can't name your sources, but it's just like you read this article and it just makes you kind of want to go, well, that was a waste of my 10 seconds it took me to read that.
Right.
I don't know. Like, to me, if you had those sources, you reach out to Merlini. He either gives you a statement or he doesn't. If he doesn't, you trash the article because there's no substance anymore.
And it does
say that's kind of where I would go with it.
And the article does say that Skim reached out but had no reaction from Merlini. But no,
not every article has to come to life, right? I've written at least half of the articles I've written to post on my website. I've gotten like more than halfway through and been like, this sucks. I would be embarrassed to post this. I'm throwing it away. Sometimes you got to do that. Sometimes you got to know when to, should pull the ejector seat. But I don't know. Basically, it's not my place to say what Ben's plans are. I'm sure he'll make an announcement when the time feels right. But in the meantime, he's been streaming a lot of Dota, so we'll see.
The look into your coffee cup when you said it's not my place gives nothing away. Though I will say, and this may have been sparked by the fact that we have seen an increased presence of a certain coddle guy at LAN events and working a lot with BTS. So whether or not there's substance. Let's hope that there's a position available if he goes, and if he doesn't, maybe there'll still be a position available for a certain tall, skinny, attractive man to step into the BTS house.
I will say it doesn't. There is not a. We don't think of casting positions as a finite, like we need X amount of casters, we have X amount of casters. There's basically two types. All right, there's three types of casters. You have analytical casters, you have your play-by-play casters, and you have the very few chameleon slippery snake folks that can do both. I think Gods is a good example of somebody that can do play-by-play and also has analysis. Synderin is actually an example of someone who can do both. Even though he does analysis, if he has to, his play-by-play is actually pretty solid. So Merlini's an analyst, Dakota's, a host, play-by-play guy, kind of like myself. So Merlini or not, it doesn't really change what our plans are or are not with one Coddle guy.
Which, by the way, I have no idea what any of those plans are. I just really like the guy. He helped me get into casting in the first place, and would love to see something come of that in the future.
I'm a big fan of Dakota. I will say that he is a top-notch dude and a good caster. I like it. It's great with him at StarLadder, man. I will talk about that later.
Yeah,
we'll
absolutely.
Talk about it.
I do. I really want to talk about that. So, getting to the tournament news, we want to wrap it up. Area 51 Cup is the first piece of tournament news we have. Last round is on the way tomorrow. It's going to be a best of 3 between Virtus Pro and Ninjas in Pajamas. It's for those of you who don't know, because Area 51's been kind of a weird thing. There's not really a ticket that I've seen. It's sort of been kind of... I know that when I talk to my Dota FM casters, a lot of times they're like, is there a tournament going on today? I'm like, yes, Area 51. Go find it. It's at the top of the list. So that's been a little bit tricky. However, it's a unique format. The winner takes home $4,500. That's nothing to sniff at. A 4-day tournament, single elimination,
God damn it,
best of
Toffees.
3. What did I do?
Nothing. Sorry.
Sorry. It's a good amount of money. So this is a new format that we haven't really seen before. I like it personally. What do you think of this format? Do you think this is the future of tournaments, or do you think it's kind of a novelty?
Oh God, I think some of it is the nature of it being a smaller tournament. The total prize pool is 10K, right? Is that? So I think the nature of it being smaller is such that it needs to be a little more top heavy. I think it's all relative to the scale of the tournament. I think that's kind of like a new standard for $10,000 cups. I don't think that's the new standard for like a DAC coming up. It's different when you're talking about fuck you money in terms of millions and oh that's nice, but I'm not going to retire off this tournament. So I like it though. I am a fan of straightforward formats. As we'll talk about in StarLadder, I'm so over group stages, dude. I'm so fucking over best of 1 group stages. It's unreal. So I like brackets that are easy to follow. They make sense. I can just look at it and go, oh, you beat them, you beat them, you beat them, you won. Congratulations. I'm moving on with my life. I remember the days of MLGs like in 2012, 2013, when you're looking at this StarCraft bracket and it's just like an open bracket into this invite bracket, into a bubble race, into a double limb with extended series, into another double limb. Like just fucking put them into a bracket. Like there comes a point where fairness just overshadows like people being able to watch the tournament and know what the hell's going on. So I on a personal level, I like simplicity.
And with the saturation of tournaments too, it's sort of nice. I think it's also really nice that this tournament obviously hasn't attracted the let's say the big 5, right? The massive teams, the super tier 1s, maybe the tier 0s. This has been something that's been really nice, I think, for some tier 1.5 teams that needed a chance to get some play in, get a little more front space, get a little more practice, and we saw some really great games come out of this tournament. So I'm looking forward to that. Tomorrow is the finals. Make sure you check them out. There's not a ton else, going on at the same time. It's not like it has been in the past where there's been 6 games at once. So definitely check it out.
A lot of teams preparing for DAC and all that kind of stuff. I'm actually sad that I didn't get to watch the Alienware Cup coverage. I've been casting Esportal, so I can't watch and cast at the same time. It was fun. Well, at least on paper, we were theory crafting like the Virtus Pro Polar NIP, and then going into Empire, kind of mini StarLadder rematch. Yeah. I'm secretly a little glad the NIP guys beat Empire. I think they're a really cool team. How to say this properly. I don't want to make it sound like other players are jerks, but those players are particularly nice, punctual, easy to work with, and I like their attitudes. I like where they're coming from. I like their style. I spent a lot of time getting to know them all a bit better at StarLadder, so I'm glad to see them doing well. And I also think their approach to the game is very interesting, and I don't think many people in the community take them seriously in terms of being like top tier competitors that can beat your Virtus Pro Polars, beat your Empires, and not chalk it up to this. Oh yeah, oh, everybody gets lucky sometimes.
Right.
Like no, they're actually a top tier team, even though they haven't been on the radar. Like TI5, look out, because I think if this team stays together, they've got a lot of promise.
Wait, to your point, they beat Virtus Pro Polar, who we can agree has been on a pretty good rampage lately, 0-2. So that they took them down quickly. They ran through Empire 2-1. I think they look good for tomorrow. So Ninjas in Pajamas, kudos to them. Keep up the good work. I love seeing new teams flourish, or rehabilitated teams flourish, I should say. And hopefully they continue to. But you brought up strange formats and how it's nice to see something straightforward, which actually takes us to our next league coverage, which is the Esportal event that you've been covering. This is different, right? Because for those of you who don't know, Esportal is not a complicated tournament in terms of the sections. It's complicated in terms of how many qualifying brackets there actually are. So when you get into a qualifier, you play until you're out. But there are, correct me if I'm wrong, 3 open qualifiers and 3 invite qualifiers, correct?
It's 3 open, 3 invitational, and then there are 2. The last 2 teams qualify through their online ladder, which has not been released yet.
And then the
And then that's
partridge
how
in the
you get
pear
8
tree.
teams that go to the finals.
So that's how the 8 come up. So today we actually just wrapped up the second open invitational. So this is one where anybody could enter from start to finish and fight their way all the way through. Interestingly enough, some of the teams in the open were a lot bigger than you'd expect to see in an open. My Insanity, M5, those are probably the... Oh, and BBC, the Balkan Bears, who my heart goes out to them because they've been through 2 opens so far, and they've almost gotten to the end in both of them.
You get down on the BBC Toffees?
They work their butts off. You gotta respect that. For me, the big surprise though of Esportal Open this time around was FL Int. I don't know if did you get to cover their games? For Love International.
We got to cast the one series against Moscow 5 today where they were eliminated.
So
that's all I got to see of them.
They're a rookie team. They were actually competing in the Amateur Dota 2 League less than 6 months ago. And now they're in the open of Esportal, going all the way into the deep end, going up against teams like Game Online, M5 International. I don't know. To me, that speaks volumes of where these guys could possibly go. That said, My Insanity is the ones that qualify. So they will be going to the big show along with, so far, qualifiers are Hellraisers, Empire, and now My Insanity. So Hellraisers won the first open. Hellraisers is another team. Surprising that they qualified through an open, right? Like, I mean, they've been on fire lately.
Yeah, lately, but you have to remember that was the first open, so that was kind of the tournaments are pretty staggered. So when Hellraisers qualified, that was kind of before their hot streak. If anything, that was kind of a precursor to perhaps a hot streak that was about to come about. But in general, I think it's a really interesting format, and I like that there is some mobility towards these teams that are, whatever you want to call them, B tier teams, or certainly serious enough to be top tier or quality competitors, but certainly aren't making a full-time living playing Dota or winning tournaments. So for that, I think Esportal definitely it's a good format for that for sure. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't think My Insanity being in an open tournament is really that surprising.
That's true.
The invitationals are only 8 teams, and the prize pool for this tournament, I think the total is like 110,000 euro. The bulk of it goes to the LAN finals, but there are prizes along the way for each of these tournaments. So there is sort of this mismatch of quality in terms of the invitationals, where you're not going to get the top tier teams, or at least not all of them, with $100,000 prize anymore. When you have DAC and TI and all these other big tournaments, and some of the huge money that MLG is talking about, some of the your secrets and your Cloud9s, they're going to be a little more selective. And this is sort of right on the cusp of, is this enough money to make it worth our time? So seeing a team like My Insanity, I don't know where they stand in the eyes of Esportal, but I wasn't too surprised to see him go through the open tournament today. It was fun. Moscow 5, huh? What a team. PGG, that fucking guy. I don't know what his deal is, but I like it. Today, he dropped Agi Treads to use a 17 charge magic wand. Just think about that for a minute. You normally drop stat items so you get more value out of your uses. Agi Treads don't give you anything in terms of a magic wand. What's he doing? You already have Treads. Just swap them. Why are you putting them on the ground? Those are the PGG plays. He got isolated by a Clockwork as Witch Doctor. He's just sitting in the cogs. Just him and the Clockwork, right? They're just looking at each other, kind of poking a little bit. Uses battery assault, and PGG's sitting there. Okay, I can't auto attack. I keep getting interrupted. I know. Death Ward instantly interrupted. It's like, what was the plan there? You know what's going on. There's no creeps in the cogs. There's PGG only moments. But for every silly derpy play he makes,
Right.
there's a big one to make up for it. So
Mm-hmm.
he's one of those guys that it's a blast to cast him, and you got to keep an eye out for those little nuances because he does some crazy shit.
Absolutely, I could not agree with that more. And I love watching PGG. I just feel like I don't get a chance to watch him nearly enough. That said, let me ask you this before we transition to StarLadder. Tell us a little bit what was it like? When'd you get off of the plane from StarLadder? It can't have been more than a day or two ago, right?
Let's see. We landed. I don't operate in days that well. I think we got back Monday night on the 19th. That sounds about right.
And then you guys started.
Usually the finals end at like, well, whatever, 9 p.m., 10 p.m. And usually we leave for the airport that night at like 3 or 4 in the morning and take a morning flight out at like 6 a.m. or 7 a.m. And the venue is about an hour-ish away from the airport, pending traffic. So I'm pretty sure we got back Monday night with all the time changes and stuff.
Okay. So you got back Monday night, and then I think you guys started Esportal Tuesday, or isn't, I believe.
No, Wednesday. We did coverage today and yesterday. So Tuesday was our off day for casting. LDZ took on all of the Alienware Cup stuff, and Gods and I did some clerical things and just got caught up and kind of tried to readjust our sleep schedules.
So it wasn't too bad jumping back into Esportal because you got a little bit of rest first.
Yeah, I mean, everybody has their own thing about flying, and you go this way, and you put a mitten up your butt, and you don't get jet lagged. I mean, I think it's easier to fly east to west, coming home like Ukraine to California. I think for whatever reason, that's just easier. I didn't feel that jet lagged coming back, but I mean, I sleep on planes. My strategy is pop a few Benadryl, pass the fuck out, don't get up to piss, and just fucking hug that window, And that's my strategy. So when I wake up, I feel not really fresh, but like I at least slept a little bit.
Did you say mitten up your butt?
Yeah, I don't know where that came from.
All right, for those of you who are watching, that is not a prescribed option for fighting jet lag. Do not try that.
I don't think so. Don't try that at home unless you're really, really wild.
You don't want the Hugh Grant treatment at the hospital, so that's just something to be aware of. Okay, so that's it for news stuff. Now let's talk a little bit about why Zyori stopped by the show. StarLadder just wrapped up. You were over there in the LAN tournament. It was so a couple of things. First, I want to start out by saying that the panel, by the way, looked awesome. We saw the tweets come out day one. Everybody in suit jackets or ties, like the dapper ratio of that cast was phenomenal. Also, I don't know if you guys had anything to do with this. StarLadder actually set up the desks the right way, so you were facing each other with the angle on the desk instead of the flat desk like TI had.
We had nothing to do with it. That was just StarLadder nailing it.
Stepping it up. So,
although they did actually change the desks. The first day, the desks were high, and we came back the next day, and they said, I think they literally like took our desk and just cut the bottom off of it and said, okay, we lowered the desk because the camera shot was too awkward. So then we weren't allowed to stand anymore. So they did make some adjustments, but they did a good job with this.
It does show that they're thinking about the camera, which I think is a big step in esports for us moving to the next level. That said, it looked good. It felt good. You had the pleasure of sort of hosting the panel. Can you talk a little bit about sort of the experience and maybe what you as a group, as BTS, was going for when you went into StarLadder?
Okay, so for me, I can only compare the most recent StarLadders because those are the two lands that I've been to, and we had sort of a slightly different approach both ways. I have to say, I want to make an aside before we get too deep into this. Charlie is the one person that I am okay critiquing my outfits because Charlie goes to events and dresses fucking nice. When I see Conrad at events, I think Charlie probably told him to do that. No offense, Conrad, but that's just how highly I think of Charlie in terms of fashion. So when Charlie tweets me 10 seconds into the broadcast and says, "Yo, bitch, your jacket's too big," I think, you know what? Maybe this jacket is too big. Thank you, Charlie. That's valuable feedback. So shout out to Charlie for having fashion sense, for helping esports look that much more dapper. Charlie, we need you. We know you, and you're really stepping it up.
Let's be honest, though. We don't all have that esports money where we can get tailored jackets like Charlie does, okay? Some of us have to buy it off the rack from Men's Warehouse, Charlie, and they don't taper the shoulders, brother. They don't taper the biceps. So I still like the pocket square. The pocket square was great, though.
Thank you. Yeah, I ordered a whole bunch more off Amazon, but they didn't arrive in time, so that was a little bit of a bummer. But Yeah, the other thing that chaps my ass a little bit is if I see one more fucking comment like Eternal Envy, thanks for posting all that stuff. Now the casters are really stepping it up. It's like, son, I got this jacket for Christmas as a gift. You think my parents give a shit about what Eternal Envy thinks about my clothing? Let me tell you a secret. They give zero shits. My parents just like nice clothes, and they like seeing me in nice clothes, so they give me nice clothes. That's all there is to it. Everybody likes dressing nice. There's not some secret. There's not some like, wow, now that we all got flamed real hard by a player, everyone's dressing up. People always, come on, man, come on. I'm not sorry. That was a
No, there's a valid point though to the fact that like, why there was Envy did make this post that we need to be more professional. At the same time that Loda made this tweet about why do we always wear hoodies, and he does have a point.
I saw that. I was thinking like, when was the last time I wore a hoodie on a panel? Never. Like, we do dress up.
Right. And I think that there have been some tournaments where it was a bit goofier or a bit more casual, but at the end of the day, like, you wouldn't wear a suit at the Summit because the Summit's not that kind of tournament. So
yes,
I can see where the fans are coming from saying these tweets, these blog posts, they did it. But for instance, I can speak for myself. When I started the show, I wore a beanie because I was too lazy to comb my hair, and a t-shirt. And that was nice for the time that it was, but if you want to grow, if you want to expand, and you want to be considered an actual competitor in the market, you've got to take the next step. So I'm glad to see that you guys all look so damn good. Plus you brought a Dakota who's just attractive. And you made yourself a beautiful panel. You guys made yourself, like, the whole panel. It was beautiful. Plus, I don't know if you realize this, your pocket square matched God's tie, and, like, Merlini was matching Coddle Guy. It was sort of ridiculous.
I will ruin a little bit of the facade that some of that was happenstance, but a little bit of it was coordinated. It was coordinated in the sense that, like, we had an idea of, like, what colors people brought and tried to kind of make a basic effort to, match a little bit. It ended up working out. It was a little more serendipitous than originally planned, I will say, but there was some good matching going on. Gods is he's a pretty good dresser. Every so often, I mean, him and I both, if you have good fashion, every so often you go a little too far, try something that doesn't work. That comes with the territory. But
no, we saw the tights. We saw the tights at TI.
Yes, I actually just bought some Tetris tights. I'm not going to model them for you, but
I appreciate that. I appreciate that.
So anyway, StarLadder panel. Basically, some of it is limited by the amount of people we can bring. That's like the very first thing is what are you picturing in terms of when we talk to an organizer like StarLadder? What's the budget? What are our options? Can we bring 4 people? Can we bring 6 people? And obviously, the more people you can bring, the more stuff that you can do. For the last StarLadder, we had 4 + 1, and the +1 was Shiver, who was there kind of as official talent, kind of brought in by usually just goes anyway just to kind of hang out. So it seems silly for us not to utilize her in a way to do interviews or be on the panel or what have you. So that gave us kind of a float person last time. This go around, we only had 4. There was no Shiver. So the roles were a lot more kind of ambiguous. I think last go around, it was very more clear cut. Like LD was our caster. He cast like 80% of the games or something, right? I did a few when he needed a break. Shiver did a couple, or Sinden Ben did a couple, that kind of stuff. And it was very clear, like, okay, you are the host. Like the point of that event was to really like brand you. You are the event host. You're the red eye for ESL, but for this event. And I like that. That's kind of my thing. And this go around, like last time, LD was kind of the ringleader a little bit. He's the guy in charge, kind of calling the shots. It's sort of it's a group vision, but he's sort of like, all right, like, who's casting the next game? LD, tell me who's doing what, and I'll make it happen, kind of a deal. This go around, we have Gods and Dakota, who are first timers in Kiev, not really sure what to expect. Merlini, who doesn't want to do anything besides just talk about Dota. So I was kind of the guy that was putting the pieces together a little bit. I'd been there before. I was, all right, this is how the finals are going to go. They're going to bring the teams in. They're all going to pick a song. They're going to play it. We're going to talk about this. We're going to... However, so I was kind of directing a little bit, and the way that we rotated the casting was that everybody actually casted the same amount of games. The format with the BO3s and the lack of group stages worked out that everybody cast 2 of the best of 3s every day, and then on the finals, everybody got 1 series. So the casting was a totally even spread. Really, the hosting should have been whoever is casting isn't hosting, so whoever's on like that far right seat. And it kind of ended up there were a few times like I was casting, and then I would also wrap the show, which is a little weird. It doesn't really flow quite right. So the vision for us was basically, we have 2 kind of first-time talent for this particular event. This was Dakota's first big LAN, so I don't know. Our priority was really just making everybody look cool. We have this idea of just making sure people aren't set up to fail. Like setting up a panel with talent that doesn't make sense, where you have like 4 play-by-play hosts and no analysis. It's like, well, whoever's hosting that panel is going to get flamed because it's just a bad panel.
Right.
We're setting those people up to fail. So our goal is always, let's set people up to not fail, put them in a position where you're going to have a good co-caster, you're going to be around people that you can work well with so that the end product is good. And the goal was basically just to share the love this go around, and I think we achieved that pretty well. Overall, we were all pretty happy. It's nice having versatile talent. You've got chameleon gods who can do anything. You've got the Zyori Dakota, which is hype and lacking analysis, but people still seem to like it. Then you got Merlini with any of the hype casters. It was like the perfect 4 talent to do any combo and still get pretty decent casting quality.
Right. Well, it did. It flowed really well. And to kind of talk about the casting aspect of things, this is sort of one of the reasons I contacted you, is I felt like it was a really... Not only were the games good, and we'll touch this first. To a certain extent, I think a lot of us went into StarLadder, and honestly, I'll say this up front because I've said it on the show before. I was bitching constantly before the LAN finals of StarLadder 11 because I bought a ticket immediately, and then a bunch of the teams that I bought the ticket for left the tournament, and I was really salty about that. And you can ask Greg and Charlie, like literally, I was just bitching about it constantly. That said,
rightfully so, Toffees. Rightfully so. That is false advertising to some degree. If I was a consumer, I would be a salty one about it, a salty dog, if you will.
But I wasn't mad when I watched this LAN tournament because the games were good, the coverage was great, it felt clean. What do you attribute to? I mean, why do you think these games were so strong? Because they were all very good.
Well, one thing that's interesting is the vast amount of 2-0s. I got a lot of tweets like, how can you be so excited about all of these 2-0 series? But part of what was interesting about it is that the teams were really even. If you look at the Gosu Gamers ELO ranking, like I think 7 of the 8 teams were just in order of like 7th through 13th based on ELO. And that's, you say what you will about ELO and region locking. I don't think it's a perfect system, but I think it is a relatively good gauge, one of the better tools that we have to just sort of get a feeling of where do I stand relative to all the other, or where does this team stand relative to all the other teams. So when you see that in the ELO, it's like, wow, we're destined for some pretty even match Dota. I think also the nature of it being a pretty heavy CIS EU driven mix of teams, they tend to be more action packed. Their play style tends to be pretty aggressive, tends to be a little throwy at times. And even though it's not like the best, highest quality Dota, the safest plays, I think it does translate to more action packed Dota that's a little bit more fun to watch. Everybody has their different tastes. Some people love the stalemate 40-minute farm fest for that huge team fight at 70 minutes. Not really my cup of tea. No. I like a bloodbath, but to each his own. So I think the nature of the games and the teams just they played well. It was fun Dota, fun strategies. I think that just a mixture of good teams, and people get too caught up in the tier 1 teams. There's a lot of fun things you can do in Dota outside of just being the best team in the world. And that's one of the reasons I like NIP, is I spent a lot of time talking to them, and they told me, we don't really care about the meta. We don't really give a shit if this hero is popular right now. We draft what we think works for us, what we think is interesting, and what we think can counter other heroes. And we're not afraid to try stuff that's a little different, stuff that might backfire, but we're willing to take that risk, do something different, and be innovators. And I think that was shown very clearly in their drafts at StarLadder. I don't know what they played today in Alienware, but they did some crazy shit. To them, Venomancer is one of the most highly contested heroes right now, and a lot of teams disagree. Same with Dazzle. They were like first picking Dazzle in like 80% of their games. No one else was doing that. And that's the kind of stuff that, even though they're not regarded as a totally top tier team, that doesn't mean they're less fun to watch. The stuff they put up is still very, very interesting to see and analyze and see how it actually works out in practice. So I think all that combined just made for a good tournament.
The games were good. I thought they were exciting. You're right. CIS teams are a lot of fun to watch. They tend to have that sort of aggressive, let's make the early game count mentality, which means that even when you see a 2-0, you had a lot of fun watching it. That said, I saw a tweet from Vlad that said they'll never hold another tournament in CIS countries again. Is there something specific that happened at StarLadder that you know of that sort of... Because it's been in the same place for as long as I can remember.
So it's a combination of things. I wouldn't take that as like there's a degree of language barrier. Vlad's spoken English is better than his written English. Hands down, he admits that as well. And that sort of sounds like a promise, like a teaser, like an announcement of an announcer, like, we've got a venue lined up StarLadder Season 12 will be in Norway.
Right.
That's not really what that tweet means. That tweet means I'm very frustrated with all the issues we're having because this is based in Ukraine, and I
Right.
don't think we're ever going to do another event here again because this is unacceptable. And the big thing is visas. Ukraine is not a friendly place for a lot of areas of the world in terms of visas. We're lucky as Americans because we have visa waivers and we can just rock up with a passport and say, "Hello, Ukraine. Yeah, I'm gonna go mess around with your computers." And they're like, "Hey, cool, come on in, America." It's a lot more difficult for people that are in the CIS area, like Belarus, Kazakhstan, a lot of these countries that have top tier players. Visas are a big issue, and the nature of these events are you don't always have enough lead time to make it happen, and you have to make hard decisions with replacing teams. There's that stuff of it gets tricky. So that, and then all of the issues with paying out past prize pools and stuff that Vlad's been under the gun for. Players rightfully so very salty about not getting money that they're owed, and I feel bad for Vlad because he's stuck in a very difficult situation where Valve sends money to them.
Right.
It goes through the Ukrainian customs or government or whatever, and they look at this and go, "Well, that's a whole lot of money for something weird, video games. That doesn't sound very legitimate." That's for that economy. That's a lot of money. The exchange rate from dollars to the hryvnia is insane. So that's a lot of local currency. So there's just a lot of issues running the tournament out of Ukraine, and I think he's getting at for StarLadder to really go to the next level, they need to find a new place to host the LAN finals so that they can make sure all of the teams that qualify actually show up to the event, because it's disappointing for everyone when IG qualifies, they're going to play with Burning as a stand-in, everyone's pumped, and 2 days before the event you're like, well, they couldn't get visas, sorry. And there's actually nothing you can do about it, and it really sucks for everyone. It damages the quality of the tournament, kind of damages the brand, and it just people are sad, and you don't want people to be sad when they're thinking about your event. You want people to be pumped and ready to absorb as much content as they can.
Absolutely. I could not agree with that more. So that's exciting that they're at least making changes as needed. That said, we're going to move forward to a little bit of something else that's been talked about a lot, and that is you specifically and your casting. Zyori, guys, if you haven't noticed or didn't notice this week, was sort of the belle of the ball in a lot of ways. People were talking about the casting out there. His play-by-play has improved a lot. His camera work is phenomenal. Barely missed any kills. These are just, rough quotes taken from different places. Now, my question to you is, and I kind of talked to you about this on Skype a little bit, is this... You feel like I didn't change anything. It's just, that's the way that things ebb and flow. Or did you prepare specifically for this tournament? What did you do to get ready for StarLadder? And do you feel like there has been a significant improvement?
I think that it's a combination of several factors. I think one, there is a noticeable improvement. If you look at the first tournament LD and I casted together, the ESP Shock Therapy Cup that I referenced earlier, which happened around this time last year. This is actually my 1-year anniversary coming out to BTS. I think the 22nd is when I officially arrived coming out. I actually just realized that looking at the date here. Compared to my casting at the StarLadder, StarLadder finals, just in general, not one thing specifically, not even just the hype, just general knowledge, general confidence, ability to speak quickly, ability to control the camera, analyze what's going on. I remember seeing on Reddit 6 months or so after I was hired, just there has been no improvement at all with this idiot. I'm just well, first of all, there has been some improvement. Second of all, it takes a long time. Dota is a really complicated game, and the nature of casting and doing camera work is multitasking to the extreme. So just raw practice makes a big difference.
Right.
And I've cast a whole lot of games over this last year, so I think I actually have improved a fair bit. Is that your cell phone, Toffees?
No, it's my laptop. That was really weird.
Oh, that is weird.
It wasn't even turned on.
That's some. You gotta look into that, dude.
That's some
There's
next
shit going down.
That's some next level creepy. So please continue with what you were saying before the ghosts of this house that was built in the 1700s.
So I think there is some of that. Honestly, I think the haircut makes a huge difference. I am ashamed at humanity in general for how shallow we are as a species. It makes me sad from a philosophical standpoint that the difference of a haircut is the difference between people thinking that I'm this disgusting faggot that shouldn't leave my cave, and being this amazing caster that is so amazing, and you're now my idol. It blows my mind that people can go so black and white just on something so trivial as a haircut. But that's a philosophical conversation for another time. But I do think that's made a difference, and I think the haircut and the positive reaction and reinforcement to it has also given me a bit of a confidence boost, certainly much more so than I ever would have expected when I was thinking about getting a haircut. So I mean, it's just a little bit easier when you're casting and you go to read the feedback and it's mostly positive. It kind of, it invigorates you a little bit. So I think that helps. The other thing is that some people don't seem to understand. You see comments like, "Oh, he's just the fake hype, all this fake yelling," and I read that and just think, I don't know what fake hype is.
Right.
I'm either excited or I'm not. I don't know how to pretend to be excited. I like Dota. I like it when people make big plays, and when it happens and people are screaming next to me, I get hype. During the grand finals of StarLadder, there was some issue with the setup. I could hear the Russian casters in my headset while I was casting.
Wow.
So you're casting the games. There's the entire venue is packed with crazed Dota fans, and it's a CIS matchup. So anytime something happens, one person dies, the crowd's totally polarized. Everyone's going apeshit. It's impossible not to be hype when you're casting the grand finals of a live LAN. Just the nature of that many bodies in that same room getting so excited, you are naturally just excited. And then hearing the Russian casters in my headset, just the way they cast it, they just say player names. They're just screaming. It's like Kaskin, Fata, Roshan, Fata. They just start, like, you hear that, and it just makes you excited. It doesn't matter what's going on or what they're saying. I can understand shit, but it still invigorates me. So like, there were points in the finals where I just started yelling because everyone else is yelling. I don't know what else. You're just so in the moment. The adrenaline is you get drunk from the adrenaline, and there's just nothing fake about it. So I think it's like the combination of it being a really exciting finals, really hype matchup, a really active crowd, kind of my reinvigorated confidence recently, and just generally improving over the last year and just getting better at what I'm doing. All that combined, I think that's where some of it, some of that positive feedback came from. I don't know. That's the best that I could analyze it.
Well, it makes sense. I mean, when we talk about theater and acting and all this stuff, one of the first things we talk about is groupthink and energy flow, right? And these are things, the idea that the room energy tells you when to be funny. If you're doing a show or you're a stand-up comedian, you make a joke and you know if they're going to laugh before the people laugh because of the energy in the room. Same idea goes for reading Reddit and general consensus. And I hate to do it, I leave Twitch chat up when I'm working because you kind of want to see, oh, did I forget the overlay? Oh, did I mess up something? Is the quality bad? But when you see people spamming, this sucks, then you try to fix it, you start to think about it, it gets in your head. But when it's spamming saying best caster North America, you're like, all right, well, I'm just going to go with what I do best and have a great time. And it goes better. So that's amazing.
Frankly, I don't put too much stock in what Reddit has to say. I'm going to be totally honest. There was a point in my career years ago, and even when I was hired at BTS, where I cared too much. And I remember talking to Merlini about it and him telling me you just have to care less. I'm like, well, how do I do that? Usually people are telling me I need to care more about stuff. How do I just magically say this doesn't bother me anymore? And it's just a skill set. If you're a Star Trek guy, you know what? I just watched Enterprise not that long ago. I was just thinking about the Vulcans and their mind. It just takes mental prowess, the ability just to block it out and say, this is bothering me and I know it shouldn't, and just scolding yourself every time you read some bullshit and it starts to bother you. And we all get caught up in it every so often. One of us will tweet something that's inappropriate and it causes a Reddit shitstorm, and you get caught up in the negativity, and it happens. But it just takes practice and persistence, and the ability to just kind of block it out a little. But they're bipolar. It's a collective. I know it's not just one person. The Reddit group is, as Charlie has said before, I don't know if it was a Gurgon censored ever, but just like, unlike Reddit, when I don't know what I'm talking about, I'm just going to shut the fuck up. Yeah. Most of the time, they have no idea what they're talking about. They have like 10% of the information that went into the decision they're arguing about, and just totally projecting. Like that thread of like someone asking like how Merlini has enough money to own the BTS house, like that is the epitome of just everything that I detest about the subreddit. And the fact that that was upvoted and comment on, not that somebody posted that dumb throwaway thread, but that people actually put in some 2 cents like, no, I bet that with all the money he makes from doing ESL and all this stuff, he could afford easily a house. I'm just like, why are you pretending like you know what you're talking about? Just say, I don't know. I wonder too.
And it was just... Well, it was silly because we all know the money came from the Zephyr winnings that he got while he was down there in Korea. So that's no, but seriously, you're right. People just make it up. They go with it. At the end of the day, though, I stand by this, and Nahaz brought it up in chat just now. Reddit is strangely addicting, and it pulls you in. It's sort of like this
It is.
this lovely drug. But what I tell myself, because it's Reddit, is the fact of the matter is, if you're on there, if people are talking about it, if that means they're watching it, and if they're watching it, for every 2 people who hate it, there's probably 25 who love it. And at the end of the day, it helps grow the business, does it not? It helps grow visibility.
In general, yeah. I don't know that I totally believe that. I think any press is good press when you're a nobody, and then there comes a point where that is certainly not a true statement. Any press is not good press for BTS these days when people are, cruising on the hate train. But I don't know. Reddit's cool. It's a cool idea for a website. It makes me sad that so many people of power put so much stock in Reddit. Not many people do, but there are certain organizations and individuals that think Reddit is more important than it is, and it's a vocal minority. That is your hardcore user base. Those are the people that play the game a lot, understand things very well, love to analyze, and love to complain about, in general, very, very minute details. We have a general rule of thumb that if you're getting flamed really hard on Reddit, it's probably based on something that's remotely true. So, for example, if someone's saying, "Oh, that idiot Zyori, he's just some meme spouting faggot." Well, that's obviously not totally true, but there probably is an inkling of truth in that I'm probably overusing memes, or that I say memes so much that someone identifies me with that, and maybe I should consider reining in on the amount that I use memes. So we tend to look at that as an amplifier, and when there's a huge outbreak or a shitstorm of something specific, usually it's based on some little inkling of truth that is worth identifying. But it needs to stop there. Getting into it and trying to argue with people when the conversation is already so far in one direction is just, end of the day, our strategy is what will really shut people up is just to improve. And that was like one of the first things LD told me in my very first review coming out. And, when I was getting flamed a lot for the quality of my camera control and casting, he said, the best way to deal with this and to stop the haters is simply to improve. Stop missing kills and people will stop flaming you. And like, that's a really like bold, direct thing to say to somebody who's like kind of upset that he's getting flamed so hard. But that's like that slap in the face of reality. That was like, you're right. I just need to be better. And I think camera control is the one area that I've improved the most.
Absolutely.
Not to toot my own horn here, but
no, I mean, I messaged you because of that.
Practiced a lot.
I think it's improved dramatically. Have you changed any systems that you use, or have you just been working with the slow? What have you done to improve as a cameraman?
I don't use any of the little tricks that Wepis or Scriff have talked. They've talked about like their auto config file. And there's like I don't know what it's called, but the thing that like helps guide the camera. I don't mess around with any of that bullshit. The one recent change that I use a lot is the vision. The F1, F2, F3. Yep. So now you can see through the fog. That's a new change. I think that's something that for whatever reason most people are not utilizing very much, and I see that as like, personally, I want to see what the other people see. It's very easy to be like, oh, I can't believe he walked into the Roche pit. But when you see it from their perspective, it's like they have zero vision right now. He doesn't know what's going on. Yep. It adds to the hype. And I think it makes it easier for me to hype up a big play, for me to see that it's a big play when I use that vision. So for me, it's just a no-brainer. I saw that change and was like, oh, that's great. I'm going to use that all the time. It can be a double-edged sword, though. There have been times where I'm looking at that vision and then a gank happens or something happens because I can't see it on the mini-map because I'm blind fog. So you need to be careful, and it takes some practice. The biggest thing, though, I mean, I've worked with LD a bit. We've done a couple of sessions with like camera control and looking at like what makes good camera control and what makes bad camera control. There were 2 kind of turning points for me, and the first one was realizing that catching a kill isn't enough. It's not seeing the body hit the deck that matters, but it's catching the setup. So that was a big just shift in my, like, I was more like, oh, he's taking damage. That's when I want to start looking at that area. It's like, no, when you see somebody making a movement on the minimap in enemy territory, that's when you want to see it. You want to see the setup. You want to see where they were in the trees, how this kill started. That's what's important. Was the person that died too far forward? Was this a gank that's unavoidable because a blink dagger was revealed? Those are the kind of details you want to find with the camera control. The person actually dying is not really that important. So that was just a big change in mindset where I was like, oh, I caught that kill. And it's like, well, technically you did, but you didn't catch anything of substance. And then the other, which really just takes practice, is team fights. And when you have a team fight that spans one big area, I had this reflex of just like, team fight breaks out, just zoom out. There's no way you're missing kills if you just zoom out. But I think it decreases the hype. Like my goal is to stay zoomed in as much as possible and use the zoom out very sparingly because you don't want to overdo it. And it does kind of take away from like the intensity of the action when somebody dies and you're too far away. Some fights, it's absolutely perfect. It's really good for like the setup around Roshar when you can see how they're positioning. Then when the fight breaks out, you zoom in right on the action. But it was, for me, it was just LD. One of the other lines that kind of clicked for me was like, the key is follow the initiators. Think about how is this fight going to start? Is it a clockwork hook shot? Is it a storm zip in? And think about how this fight might start. Who are the key heroes to get it started? And focus on that hero first because they're going to be the ones that initiate. They're the initiators. So focus on that and then go from there. If you start the fight with, oh crap, how did this start? And you're already panicking. That's how you're going to keep missing stuff. And once you start to panic, that's when you're missing more things happening on the screen when you're trying to do play-by-play and the whole thing starts to snowball out of control. So to try to follow the initiators, and then once a fight breaks out, trying to identify what's the thing that I want to catch here. Because you can't call out all the action at once. If there's 3 people killing each other or 3 different little skirmishes, little battles, you got to try to figure out which one's most important. Part of it is gauging who's going to die first, so you can just catch the order of kills. And some of it is gauging who are the key heroes. If the 2 carries are fighting, fuck the 2 supports that are fighting over in the mid lane. That doesn't really matter. You want to see if Burning dies here, he doesn't have buyback. They push for the win. That's the kill that you want to see because that's going to be the make it or break it. So it was really those 2 things of who to follow in team fights and how to catch action that leads up. And once I kind of had those 2 things in my brain, it's just a matter of practice and just getting better at doing it. And the last tip that LD gave me that really improved was just always be moving. Don't stay stationary. Don't lock on one hero, but just get in the habit of moving around. And the 4th thing, I've got this, the last one for sure.
That's
the 4th
fine,
thing, listen to your damn co-caster. There's nothing more frustrating when your co-caster is talking about Spectre and his item build, talking about his skill set, and you're moused over on Juggernaut in the other lane, just in your own world, just like, yeah, he's talking about something, but I'm looking at whatever I want. You're controlling the camera, so you should be like, it's easy when you're talking because you're controlling it. So whatever you're looking at is what you're talking about. But when your co-caster's talking, even like if they're missing something, then you can interrupt them, point it out, draw on the mini map. But if they're talking about a ward, go to the ward, circle it. If they're talking about a hero with a weird item build, go to the item build. If they're talking about that hero's BKB, mouse over it and see what the duration is. Tell the story with the camera. You have a lot of control with the camera. It's not always just about catching kills. There's a lot of other nuances that you can. It's a very, very high skill cap thing. It's been a fun challenge, and I actually feel confident doing camera for one of the first times in my career. I remember in StarLadder when Dakota had to cast, he would say just like, all right, I did camera last time, and I was just like, dude, I'm happy to do it. Like I don't even mind. I'm glad to do the camera. I think it's kind of fun now that I've kind of got the hang of it. But it takes specific, like casting is something that you can. There's a degree of just raw hours on the mic. You have to get out those jitters, just get practice talking out loud. For camera, it's not just about raw practicing. It's practicing with a purpose. It's doing it and then having those little tips that I talked about in your back burner. Like, okay, I want to catch the setup, not just the kill. If you're just kind of moving the camera around, just like, yeah, I'll just keep getting better. It doesn't, you need to have kind of a focused strategy to improve. It's not something that just kind of comes naturally, I don't think.
I think that was actually a really helpful summary of play-by-play. And I think that a lot of times...
That was very long-winded, sorry.
Well, no, but it was good. It was things that you don't think about. I think a lot of times we talk about casters, and we don't talk about the dedicated cameraman. We tend not to talk... We get mad when someone misses a kill, but that's about all we say about camera people. And I think we underestimate how difficult it is, especially if you don't have dedicated camera, to call a play-by-play that you're watching on the screen, but still keep an eye on the mini-map to look for gank setups and rotations and item builds and vision. And it's a lot to do. And I do want to come out, and I want to say, I mean, I've said it before on the show, and the fans know this, that watching you cast StarLadder God knows when, once upon a time, was what got me involved with esports in the first place, because I had so much fun listening to that tournament. That said, though, I messaged you 2 days ago because the improvement has been phenomenal, and I commend you on the fact that you continue to work on it over a year. And I think that's something we don't see enough in esports. Well, and I can say that because I'm 31. I've worked in a lot of different businesses. I'm an old man, and I understand the value of getting better at something constantly. And I think the fact that you signed, I mean, right, you signed with BTS. You have a contract. You live at the house. Like, go have a beer and say fuck it to practice. Like, it is what it is. We see pro casters do that all the time, not just in esports, but in regular sports as well. And your commitment to improving has, I think, been a great example to the casting community that not only can you get better, but that you can turn public opinion in a lot of ways as well. On top of that, the
best way to improve. That's some of the best advice I've ever gotten. In this space, the best way to deal with haters is simply to improve. And the people that are still going to be blind haters, you're not going to change their minds no matter what you do. And that's the 5%, the 1%, whatever the hell it is that you just need to tune out and recognize that those are just sad, miserable people that are flaming everyone. It's not just you. They are projecting their own issues onto others, and it's just not worth your mental energy to get into it.
So that was a lot of fun. I appreciate you stopping by the show so we could talk a little bit about StarLadder. I hope to see BTS keeping up the work. You guys have been doing increasingly more and more and more coverage, I feel like, over the last couple of months. So BTS, I mean, I work with all the studios, so I'm usually lax to make comment, but I feel like we've seen a heck of a lot more BTS lately than some of the competitors. And I think that is a ode to how hard you guys have been hustling. And it's
Hustling
true.
has kind of a negative connotation.
Oh, okay, maybe not.
Hustling ass is probably the phrase that you want, but
hauling it. I'm old school. I guess when I grew up, hustle was good. Maybe now it's bad.
See, now I think of hustling as like a gangster hustles. You're out on the street, you're hustling on the block. You're ripping people off with your low quality product. That's what I think of when I hear a hustler. But maybe that's just me. I don't know.
You guys have been working hard, taking a lot of gigs, developing a lot of talent, and I think that it's really paying off, and it's been exciting to see. And I look forward to when Merlini decides to put the extra cash down to build on an addition to the house, so that you guys can fit some more people in there and some more computers.
I can't wait till we get a pool and he sponsors us with some new cars. This whole time I've been living with a millionaire and I had no idea.
Him and LD with his Lamborghini and Merlini with his house. Those two, good stuff. But thank you for joining me on the show. I appreciate it. I do want to say this, and I'm going to say it at the risk of making people mad at me. But that got down on Zyori before and now love him, I appreciate that. But consider whether or not things like personal appearance, the dreads, whatever it is, had something to do with that. Because honestly, I love esports. I love this business. I have a son. He is 4 months old, and I think constantly about the fact that he's probably going to be involved with the new world that we live in the internet, and how shitty it would be to see him stepped on because of something like the judgmental nature of esports fans. So that's all I'm going to say. I'm going to leave it at that. I'm going to say examine your souls, and that's a really deep way to wrap up Coffee with Toffees tonight, but I really feel strongly about that.
You went L deep with that, man.
Well, I feel like the shit posting, the shit kicking that we see is just so hard, right? Like, I want ESPN to cover esports, and I know that the forums are going to be nothing but shit kicking, and it's going to be really frustrating. So it is what it is.
Yeah, it's tricky. It's a tough world, Toffees. I don't know. The veil of the internet. It has a lot of positives, a lot of negatives. Yeah, we're stuck somewhere in the middle, I guess.
So we are. Well, that said, guys, thank you for joining us for this episode of Coffee with Toffees. As always, you can find me at Toffees_Dota2. You can find this man at Zyori TV. Not that he needs additional Twitter followers. You're a big
have more Twitter followers.
You're a big dog now. You gotta get more. So when you go to Vegas, you get free stuff. It's really the only value of Twitter.
That's what I'm talking about.
Right? That's how it works. That said, though, it was great having you. Do you have any last comments or shout outs before we log off for the night?
Oh, it's a pleasure as always, Toffees. I'm really glad you're doing what you're doing. I hope you keep doing the show. I know we talked last time about like you have a young child and your wife your wife and yourself have switched to who's at home taking care of the little sprout. And I'm sad thinking about the time when you have to go back to a 9 to 5 because I like what you're doing, man. I'm glad someone's doing it. I think it's a niche that needs to be filled. I'm sad more people aren't watching it, but you've got a value audience here, my man. There's 60 people watching, but at least 50 of those 60 are somebody important that you definitely want to hear about. So glad you're doing what you're doing. I'd love to plug my podcast, but I've been such a slacker with it. I'm embarrassed to say so. I've been meaning to record a podcast for like last 4 days since I got back from StarLadder, but it seems like every time I turn, I'm doing something else, and now I've done this. So this might even just count as Zyori podcast number, whatever we're up to. But Zyori.tv is where you can find the podcast. If you like it, listen and subscribe and comment on iTunes and all that shit. It's a pleasure. But yeah, I don't know. It's great. Thank you, Toffees. You're the man.
Thank you. So do that, guys. If you want to support the show, patreon.com/Toffees. Helps me keep me off of the poor train. Also, I'm going to throw this out there. At the risk of talking about something that's not quite official yet, think about downloading Razer Comms, the new chat program they released. because I am working on a new feature to the show where we can have call-in folks to talk to the guests as the show goes on. There's a couple of new things in the work, right? Hopefully, if what we're working on goes through, then we will have a chance to add some of these new features. So if you want to add that, RazorComms, my name is Toffees on there. You can add me and chat with me anytime you want. I'm using RazorComms strictly for a fan base and for Coffee with Toffees. So check it out. You can reach me there. And pretty much anywhere else. So thanks for listening. Hope you enjoyed the podcast. Come back again on Monday, where once again we'll have Durka from Join Dota joining us to talk about his transition to Germany, introduce him to the North American crowd a little bit more. We'll have Shayna Mad coming on in about a week and a half, and then we're gonna have Asia Amore, who's a little bit famous for some of the streams that she's done and cast in the past, is gonna come on and talk about what it's like to be a quote-unquote streamer. And she said we can talk about the hard topics. I told her I'm gonna give her the hard stuff that everybody wants to know. That could be awkward. Shit, that came out really wrong. We'll edit that out. And she said she's game to talk about it.
You are the king.
She said she's
This
game to
guy.
talk about it. So that said, I'll sign off before I get myself in more trouble. Have a wonderful day. Play more Dota. And as always, Toffees out. Christ.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Oh my god.
That's fine. We're still live. They can still hear us. I'll just cut everything after this off of the